A follower named Jason sent me this story. This happened about 13 years ago. I was in Boy Scouts, and on the way to Table Rock in South Carolina, my friend Ricky and I were playing Pokemon on our Nintendo DS. One of the adults driving us told us about a trail that Native Americans once considered dangerous. Around 45 minutes into the ride, I looked it up on my phone. 3 people had disappeared there, and 1 person had barely escaped. I thought it was just a coincidence, but I was wrong. We arrived at our campsite around 9 p.m. I set up my tent near the woods with a few others. Out of curiosity about the stories, I wanted to be close. Later that night, we began hearing twigs and sticks breaking in the woods. I grabbed my pocket knife and went to get another scout, Dwayne, from his tent. He was an Eagle Scout and stood about 6 feet tall. I was around 5'11". We weren't far off in size. When we went near the woods, we saw something human-like with pale skin. It let out a loud, horrifying scream. That's when we ran straight to the Scoutmasters. We were shaken and had to be brought home at 2 a.m. because of the anxiety. Whatever that thing was, it looked hungry or angry. A few years later, we found what became our favorite camping spot, a 3.5-mile hike to a lean-to along a scenic lake, part of a larger 20-mile loop. The trail passed several small glacial lakes with lean-tos built in the early 60s. The rule with lean-tos was that you had to share them, even if you didn't want to. The area allowed primitive camping too, but the ground was usually swampy or too hilly, so this lean-to became our go-to place. The first few times we stayed there, nobody else showed up. We thought we were lucky. But one trip in late August changed that. The road leading to the trail had just been covered in gravel, making it easier for cars. And when we arrived, there were more vehicles than usual. We hurried down the trail to try and reach the lean-to first. About half an hour into the hike, we ran into a man. He was middle-aged, carrying a full hiking pack and walking stick. His clothes looked new, like he had just bought them for the trip. Something about him felt off. He stopped us and asked, "You guys just came from the lot? How many cars are in the parking lot?" It was a strange question since the path didn't lead directly to the lot, but we answered about 7 or 8. He told us he had seen smoke near the lean-to and thought people might already be there. Then he asked if we had signed in the registry book. We hadn't. His eyes widened and he said, "Oh, you didn't sign in? You really should. If you disappear or get hurt, people will know where you were." He kept pressing the point about signing in. Then he asked again how many cars were in the lot. My friend answered, but I suddenly asked him, "Did you sign in?" He gave a short, harsh laugh and said, "Nah, I never sign in." The way he said it made my skin crawl. We hurried away, unsettled. When we finally reached the lean-to, there was indeed a couple already there. They welcomed us and let us sit while we decided what to do. Eventually, with darkness falling and rain coming in, they offered to share the shelter. As we gathered firewood together, we noticed how guarded they seemed. The woman eventually said, "Just so you two know, I have a handgun." She pulled it out and showed me when I asked. Then she set it on her lap and kept it there, even while eating dinner. Later, they brought out a bottle of whiskey. We thought maybe things would loosen up, but the woman still held the gun. She waved it around casually as she talked, sometimes dangling it loosely between her legs. It was unnerving. We tried to ignore it. Suddenly, a tremendous splash echoed across the lake. It sounded like someone had jumped in. Then another splash came from the opposite side. We tried to rationalize it as frogs, but the woman blurted out, "It's Sasquatch." She insisted they like to throw rocks in lakes to scare people. A third splash sounded near the first spot. Without warning, the woman said, "I'm going to let off a few shots to scare it." Before we could react, she emptied her entire magazine into the darkness. I was close enough to feel the air shift with every shot. That night, we slept in the lean-to with them. Even when she lay down, She kept the pistol beside her hand. I was at her feet, thinking the entire time that she could wake up and shoot us in the sleep. Somehow, I drifted off. In the morning, they packed up and left early. The whole experience was terrifying, and to this day, I'll never forget it. Thanks to Jason for sharing this story.
A follower named Daniel sent me this story. Labor Day of 2015, my mother, my wife, and I took our 3 kids to a very remote cabin we had rented out. It was an old fire watch station, with a cabin and a few sheds and shops scattered around. We thought it would be a fun getaway. After unpacking, we decided to walk a couple 100 yards down to the river. All of us were in shorts and sandals. The kids were laughing and tossing rocks on the pebbled shore when I suddenly realized there were snakes everywhere. Dozens of them, each about a foot long. My wife, my mom, and I grabbed the kids and ran. Once they were safe, I went back with a water bottle and caught one. It turned out we had stumbled into a nest of baby diamondback rattlesnakes. If even one of them had bitten a child 3 hours from the nearest medical facility, they wouldn't have survived. Shaken, we went back to the cabin. My mom and I decided to go for a short hike while my wife calmed the kids and made lunch. When we returned, only 15 minutes later, all the windows and doors of the cabin were shut tight. My wife and kids had seen a bear about 150 yards away, huffing and puffing in their direction while they ate on the porch. A few hours later, an ATV passed by. 2 rough-looking men rode it, stopping at the gate each time to stare at us in silence. They circled back 3 separate times. We were deep in the Idaho wilderness, 2 hours from the nearest town, and these were the only people we'd seen the entire trip. When night fell, things turned worse. Within 10 minutes of putting our 5-year-old son to bed, he went from perfectly fine to burning with a fever of 103. He was foaming slightly at the mouth and completely unresponsive. That was it. We packed to leave immediately. As I loaded the cars under the porch light, the 3 of us adults heard heavy footsteps. 4, maybe 6 large animals were circling the cabin. One paced just outside, breathing heavily. I made multiple trips back and forth to the cars, each time banging a stick on a pot and yelling loudly to scare whatever was out there. Finally, I got the kids into the cars one by one, then my mom, then my wife. Before we could leave, I felt compelled to close the gate. It was nothing more than a log that slid between posts, offering no protection. As I turned to go back to the car, I heard padded footsteps behind me. 10 feet away, glowing eyes reflected in the moonlight. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the night. I ran so fast, I swear I flew into the driver's seat of my car. We peeled out of there. But the terror followed us. 15 minutes down the road, my wife and I both felt a heavy, evil presence, like a shadow pressing over us. Our son was still limp, still unresponsive. That's when I noticed the baby rattlesnake in the water bottle sitting in the cup holder. I threw it out the window. Not even 2 minutes later, our son began to cry softly. He asked, "Why are we leaving? What's going on?" He had no memory of the last hour. The next day, my mother broke down sobbing. She's a lifelong Jehovah's Witness, not the type to believe in signs or omens, but she confessed she had a nightmare the night before we left. In it, we encountered snakes, a bear, and a pack of wolves. She said the outpost was filled with evil, and most of all, she said one of our children died. To this day, if I ask her which one, she cries and refuses to answer. A week later, local news reported a wolf pack sighting in that area. Wolves and bears rarely coexist in peace, yet they had both been near our cabin. I grew up in the mountains, as did my wife, but after that trip, we don't camp anymore. Thanks to Daniel for sharing this story.
A follower named Sarah sent me this story. About 2 years ago, My husband and I took our 5 kids to a water theme park in Idaho. We live in Washington State, and while I've driven through Idaho before, I had never actually stayed there. We borrowed my dad's truck and trailer, and instead of camping at the park's campground, we decided to stay at one down the road. It seemed less expensive and more fun. To preface my experience, I should explain that I've occasionally had nightmares where I felt something was trying to possess me. In those dreams, I usually recite the Lord's Prayer or shout that Jesus is my Savior until I wake up. It often takes a couple of tries, and my husband usually wakes up because I'm screaming. I regularly pray for protection, wear protective crystals, and ask my guardians to watch over me. Because I research and read about the paranormal so often, I feel it's best to take precautions. The first night at the campground was uneventful. Everything was normal. The next day we spent all day at the park, then returned to cook dinner and settle in for the night. That night, I experienced something I had only read about, but never felt before: sleep paralysis. As I drifted to sleep, I felt strangely awake. I could see the trailer around me, though it was hazy and blurred. I couldn't move or scream. At the end of my bed, I saw a figure. It looked about 4 feet tall, demon-like, with horns. Its face was hard to make out, but I felt in my mind that it was something ancient, something native to the land. It terrified me. Suddenly, I felt my husband grab my arm, and I woke up. He said, "You were screaming. Are you okay?" I told him I was fine and tried to go back to sleep. It happened again. This time the demon was closer. I shouted in my head, "Jesus is my savior, go away." But it wouldn't. I tried to scream for my husband, but I couldn't move. Again, he shook me awake and told me I had been screaming in my sleep. I said I was fine, though I wasn't. I fell asleep once more, and it happened again. Every time the thing moved closer. No matter how much I fought, it wouldn't leave. Again and again, my husband woke me up, telling me I was screaming in my sleep. Finally, I told him what was happening. He apologized, but I knew he couldn't do much. That last time, I refused to fall asleep. I wrapped myself tightly against him, clinging to him, and fought to stay awake. It felt like something was trying to pull me down into sleep, but I resisted until morning. When I woke up, I told my husband the full story. I haven't researched the area, and I can't even remember the name of the campground. I was too terrified. I hadn't shared this story with anyone until recently. Thanks to Sarah for sharing this story.
Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.